Hello and welcome back to Developer Breakdown, the show where we call up developers and then force them to tell us how their games work.
Today on the show we chat to somebody we've interviewed a lot on Noclip documentaries, Raphaël Colantonio. Raphaël co-founded Arcane Studios, the studio responsible for some of the smartest and most interesting immersive sims of the 21st century. A few years ago, Raphaël left Arcane and founded a new indie outfit, WolfEye Studios. And since then, he and a small group of developers have been working on creating an immersive sim at a smaller scale. The game that came out of this was Weird West, a fascinating story-rich cowboy shooter with bunches of player choice. Weird West is one of my favorite games of the year so far, but as is so often the case with games that try and push the envelope, there have been some criticisms of various facets of the experience. So today we're going to talk to Raphaël about the good, the bad and the ugly, the challenges of making an immersive sim with a small indie team, the work that went into creating such an open-ended narrative, and the criticism of things like combat and controls. The team also gave us footage of the earliest version of the game, which was originally a roguelike, so we'll jump into that too.
A lot to cover then, so perhaps we should start with the most obvious question of them all. What exactly is immersion and why is it important?
When we talk about immersion it would be a sum of different layers that lead to immersion. And the first-person camera definitely is part of that. But then I think, in the same way a book could be very immersive because of how your brain bridges the gap between the words and the story that is being told to you. I believe that this is the same here. Like the real process for us is to actually do the things the way we do them, which is at a very atomic level. Like each of the actions are discrete and almost tedious because you can take an object, place it on an inventory, move it from your inventory inside another slot of your inventory, put it back in the world or throw it. But the thing is that creates gameplay. It is tedious, but it creates gameplay. It creates things such as what I've read in some tweet posts, like things like, "Oh, I buried my son, dig my son up out of the grave, took his bone, and sold it to the store." That creates something, right? And so if we instead had made everything an abstraction, if you take a quest item, it goes into the abstract quest objects, or if we don't do anything of that. We do everything at a very kind of like a tedious level. But then the second phase of that is to add tools for shortcuts and making things in a mass way, etc. So another example is there's an item on the floor. On one hand, you can say, we're going to model every item that there is on the floor, even the useless ones. You can pick them up as you go there. There's an option where pick up, and it goes into your inventory. Or the other approach is to say, well, we're just going to make the ammo pickable, and that's it, and health potions, and then you don't even have to pick them up. As soon as you come close to one, it just absorbs it, and now your health goes up. Fine, we're the first kind, because it allows for more possibilities and it will create gameplay, even if it's a little more cumbersome.
Right, and even if you don't know what that gameplay may be, you're sort of opening the possibility space up.
Totally. As a game designer, I don't know yet what it's going to create, but I know it is going to create something.
I just put a barrel over here, and I was trying to see if I could get the corn to land. Oh, it did. It roasted in the barrel.
And that's the kind of thing, like if you are sensitive to these kind of things, it's amazing, right?
Right.
If you don't care for that, then you would just this game will just pass by you and you're just like, well, whatever, who cares about the corn that is inside a barrel that is on fire and therefore the corn is cooked. And to me, it's the best thing ever.
Right? How did you, I guess, do that with the story? Because that's one of the things that sort of unraveled itself to me while playing Weird West, was just how much control I had over who lived and died, what was happening in the story, in a way that, having played games for 20-something years, I had been taught that I couldn't do a lot of these things.
Well, I mean, since we're amongst friends here, I can tell you that there are not as many encounters and as varied as we initially wanted, but we've been working on it. We love to teach the player about our world through the quests that they have. Well, the only thing we can do as writers is to pre-plan a few branching, so that in case you've done that, then this thing happen, right? That's pretty much the thing. But also, we can do it in a way that doesn't cheat. Again, I think you could finish this entire game by pretty much killing anyone and doing things that are scary for a player. Like if you attack the sheriff now, then how is she gonna do everything that she's supposed to do later, right? And so you're gonna miss a lot of content, or some of the content is gonna be different from now on, and you're gonna be a little more let alone let to yourself. But it's possible, and I think that tension here is also, to me, what make this type of games. We try to plan the asshole playthrough and the good player playthrough, And by the good player, we're talking about the player who's doing what they're told, and even in doing what they're told, they still have some choices. We love to teach the player about our world through the quests that they have. So yeah, some of those encounters are of course needed for story reasons. So what happened is that we have a system where there's a pool of things that might or must happen that go there based on what the player has done. Does the player have enemies or friends for life, or has the player already seen that thing or not, etc., etc. But some players will notice. Some players will, oh my god, this is just I just killed the zombie of my dad or something, like that's what happened to in fact Dinga from Arcane tweeted that because he played during the plague event. We had a plague event, and his dad is buried into the cemetery of Grackle, and logically the zombies would come out of the thing, and one of them, if it happens to be the one that he encountered, was his dad. So this is when the systems create story based on what you've done, and sometimes it can create amazing things, and sometimes it just falls flat because there's nothing interesting on that playthrough. So that's where the procedural part can be either amazing or disappointing, and so we're trying to control that demon, that genie, let's say, right, in the ways that serve us the best and doesn't hurt us. When we start a game, and specifically a game that can be a little overwhelming, like an RPG like this, we didn't want to start directly in the middle of Grackle because it could be seen as, oh wow, there's too much to explore before I really just want to get into the meat of the game. So that's why we started not in Grackle, but like in a farm and with a smaller cinematic, something that explains what your primary goal are. But for us, Grackle, since it's about 20 minutes into the game that you see Grackle for the first time, it's a good opportunity to tell more about the game, about the world, and make that intro to a fairly grim world, actually, where something has happened. And also it tells a message. It tells we are simulating the world. People on schedules. There are stores. It's a hub. You will find some quests here. It's a home that you'll be back to often. I don't know how much you've played, if you were an Ultima fan or not, but I was a huge Ultima 7 fan, and I'm 51, so that was a minute ago. To me, Grackle is very similar to some of the cities in Ultima 7 in what they would offer. To see that little theater of life, those people that have their houses and their store and something to tell you. Well, in fact, Divinity Original Sins, if you ask the devs, I think they have like a huge passion for Ultima 7, the same way we do, right? So there's something there. Like it's the reference for a lot of designers these days.
How close is Weird West to the original musings or ideas you had when you first went independent and tried to make another immersive sim on like a smaller scale, as it were?
It's very different. I think other than the values, immersive sims is a set of values, and different immersive sims torchbearers might have different definitions of those values, but it's a blurry science, right? But I think other than the values, which have always been the values that I've had as well back in the days for any of my games, the vision for the game itself ended up being very, very different. I think the overall approach was it was going to be a roguelike where you would have one run and eventually try to live through as many adventures as you can before you lose your character, and then start again with a different character with a different start somewhere else, different background. As far as like the world definition and the vibe, I think that remained pretty intact, and it would be relying entirely on side quests. It would be the game. I always thought, man, I wish I could play a Fallout game without any main quest.
Yeah.
Just play side quests forever, because those side quests are so fun. So that was the theory, and then we found out that the way to make that happen, going through procedural approach, was limited and limiting, and we ended up thinking, we're doing a U-turn and say like we're gonna author one of those big stories as we know how to do, and then on top of that sprinkle the experience with the procedural that we've learned through the first part of the development. We went with the Fallout 1 approach, I assume, which was, it is a kind of an open world where the in-between important location is abstracted, and then you can still have an encounter that is generated either randomly or either because there's a story moment which we want to interrupt you and create that surprise there.
One of the areas of Weird West that has received the most criticism are the controls during combat. On mouse and keyboard, the game plays as you'd expect, but on controllers, player experience has varied wildly. This has been an area of concern for the team, so we asked Raphaël to explain where these issues stemmed from.
And while I have you here, why don't you hit that subscribe button and hit that like button and leave a comment, make a sandwich, call up your mom, tell her you love her. All right, let's go back.
We spent way more time on the combat that we wanted. But it's always been the case in any game that we worked on. We always think, oh well, combat is a solved problem, no worry. And then because of its sandboxy nature and because it's at the intersection of every systems and AI and everything, it's always more complex than we thought. And unfortunately, I wish we had more resource there. One thing that is very important in immersive sims, and frankly in any game that I will ever work on, is player agency. And so if you have a gun and if you can shoot at things, I wanted to be able to shoot at anything, and that was a big problem that I didn't anticipate. And also, as you're doing right now, you're climbing on things, so that was another thing. It's like, I want to be able to jump, climb, attack things from above. I need verticality, and not just me, but all our designers and all the level designers we have at WolfEye, for most part they come from Arcane, so
Right.
They had the same reflex, the same kind of like go-to ideas. And so then we ended up being in a situation where we're pretty much having a combat that is very complex to do in real time with that angle, allowing players to do whatever they want, because that sandbox experience is super core to the kind of games that we like to make.
Can you overwhelm players though in that respect?
Yeah, it's iterative. I mean, frankly, the first as we started to work on the combat, it's just a big salad to which we add ingredients. Like now we can shoot, now we can throw things, now we can kick into barrels and see them roll, and maybe if they hit some fire, they will explode, etc. At the same time, the NPCs are running around trying to shoot you, maybe looking for you if they've lost you. All those things that are super important to any game I've worked on. And frankly, the very first iterations were a big mess. Like, it was impossible to understand anything to what was happening. Where are the enemies? If they were on the other side of a wall, if they were shooting at you from outside of the camera angle, you could not even make a distinction between your followers and the enemies. Am I hidden? Am I being covered right now? Is anyone shooting at me? All of these things. That's where you work between artists, the UI, and of course programmers, and frankly everybody, game designers included. And it's a very slow, super iterative process where you have something that could be fun, but right now it's just a mess. And how do you clarify? Because a lot of what makes this combat ultimately possible or not is how do you manage to declutter it, and how do you manage to somehow serve it in a way that is digestible and clear. We've had like maybe 3 huge criticism about this game, and probably the loudest is the aiming system. Because if you like right now you're on top of something, for example, and if you pull out your gun, you can aim at pretty much anything that is targetable, and anything is targetable as long as it's got physics somehow, including NPCs, of course, and birds and a key or anything, a lantern that could blow up or something, independently of the verticality as well, and while you are jumping and running, etc. So that was an absolute nightmare to get right. I think the first factor is twin stick shooters. It's very likely that people who never play twin stick shooters would say exactly the same thing about a twin stick shooter. It's like, well, I don't get it, because they do small nudges, they don't push the thumb all the way. The second possibility is that twin shooters explain better that you have to push your thumb all the way. So there's something about the communication that we fail at giving. By the way, we are working on a different aiming system that has nothing to do with that, which we'll release at the next patch. And then, hopefully that will fix the problem once for all, because it's weird though, right? It's weird that we have some players who just like super fluent with it. It's like, yeah, it's a great aiming system, and some players are like, I don't know. I could be playing with my feet; it would be the same result.
Thanks so much to Raphaël Colantonio for talking to us. I absolutely love Weird West. I've been telling everyone to play it. They've been adding a bunch of stuff to it since it came out, and fixing a bunch of bugs and stuff based on player feedback, so it's even better. There's no better time to play Weird West. Feels like a sponsored video all of a sudden. I don't know, the game's good. You should go fucking play it. Anyway, we got loads more episodes of Developer Breakdown coming. The next one, actually, I have nothing to do with. Jesse Guarascia talked to the creators of Neon White, or at least one of them, Ben Esposito, so that will be the next episode. But if you have any suggestions, of course, for this show or anything else we do here on Noclip, please put them in the comments. All right, see you next time. Take care.